How did you find out about the British Powerboat Company in the first place as an apprentice? How did you hear about the apprenticeship?
Well, in the beginning, I was born in Southampton, and the war started, and the bombing got very close to us there, and a relation in
Whereabouts in Southampton?
Chapel.
Chapel, I know, yeah, where down there used to be Chapel Wharf, didn't there, down by Meadows Ridge?
And St Mary's Church.
Yeah.
That's where I was christened.
Yeah, I know it well.
Yeah, well, this relation of the mother's invited us over out of all the hot spot.
Yes.
Because we were not far from the gasworks.
And the Supermarine, of course.
And
not
Supermarine,
too far.
we got both of it while I was there.
Yeah.
And we lived with this relation for a while. Then my parents got a place in Oak Road, up the corner. And finally I got married, moved back to Shirley with my first wife. And then...
How did you hear about the job?
Well, then we came back here.
Yeah.
And before that, my mother wrote to the British Powerboat Company on my behalf.
Right.
And said, you know, have you got a vacancy?
Mm-hmm.
And I went down for an interview.
Right, how did you get there?
Bicycle.
Bicycle, you biked over from...
from here. We were actually...
In Dibden?
Yeah, in Dibden Perkins.
Yeah.
That's it.
So you biked down there, and who did you meet in the...
well, the first one was this Mr. Kenley.
Oh, right, yes.
He was the man that took on employees,
mm-hmm.
and his idea was that when a youngster started, you had to go into an office and be a runner.
Mm-hmm.
He put me in...
How old were you?
I must have been about 14.
14?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Because I was 13 when the war started.
And you started as a runner?
That's it. And you went to every section of the British Powerboat Company, printed in orders from the works manager whose office I was in.
Mm-hmm.
I served two people. One was Jimmy Rand, the manager, and this Kenley, who did the employment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his job after a few months, after I'd done all the rounds, and
Mm-hmm.
went in all the departments, seen all the work.
How many departments were there, Stan?
Oh, do you want me to start telling you now?
Yes, please. Do go ahead. Name the departments.
Well, there's electrical,
Mm-hmm.
there was the woodworking.
Mm-hmm. Did they all have their separate workshops?
To a certain extent, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There was the sawmill.
Mm-hmm.
There was a wages department, the security department. There was the drawing office. There was a machine department where all the lathes were.
Mm-hmm.
And over the road, in what is now got a load of different businesses on, was the where they converted the aircraft engines that were coming in, marinising them, putting gearboxes in.
Is that right? So what they were taking was what
orders
was it?
from the works manager whose office I was in.
Mm-hmm.
I served two people. One was Jimmy Rand, the manager, and this Kenley, who did the employment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his job after a few months, after I'd done all the rounds, and
Mm-hmm.
went in all the departments, seen all the work.
How many departments were there, Stan?
Oh, do you want me to start telling you now?
Yes, please. Do go ahead. Name the departments.
Well, there's electrical,
Mm-hmm.
there was the woodworking.
Mm-hmm. Did they all have their separate workshops?
To a certain extent, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There was the sawmill.
Mm-hmm.
There was a wages department, the security department. There was the drawing office. There was a machine department where all the lathes were.
Mm-hmm.
And over the road, in what is now got a load of different businesses on, was the where they converted the aircraft engines that were coming in, marinising them, putting gearboxes in.
Is that right? So what they were taking was it the Napier engine?
There were Napiers.
Yeah.
Rolls-Royce
Yeah.
and Packards.
And then they were turning them into marine engines,
Yeah, by
really.
putting a gearbox.
They were converting them, and the
Yes.
gearbox was the main thing.
I would imagine so.
What craft were they making there? Some people, such as myself, who're not over familiar with the site, think they were just building motor torpedo boats,
No.
but they weren't, were they? They were building a variety, were they?
Well, there was the torpedo boats. They were 71'6", regardless of what they say.
Yes, of course.
71'6".
Yeah.
There was the 68-foot RAF rescue launch.
That's right. That was very famous, wasn't it? It was used
Yeah.
to go out into the Solent and pick up.
That's it.
Aircraft.
They're ready for when they came back,
Yes.
in case they ditched.
I see. Yeah.
And they had 41'6" airplane tender that went out to the seaplanes.
Yeah.
They were good. They had two
Yeah.
diesel engines in. They also did a 12-foot radio-controlled target tower.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Yes.
They
Well,
used
you
to
needed it in the war, didn't you? You
Yeah.
needed to
Of course,
practice.
the boats those little boats used to come in a bit riddled sometimes,
Yeah, of course they did. Yeah.
but they were made unsinkable.
Mhm.
Yeah, these departments. There was a paint shop, electroplating shop,
Of course.
because all the screws and nuts and bolts are all plated so that salt air wouldn't corrode
Oh,
them.
I see.
Yeah.
The boatyard had the reputation of being the most progressive, most advanced in the world. Did you get that impression when you were there?
Well, it was certainly very advanced they had piecework, what we call piecework, you know that?
Yes.
Well, besides the men's, we don't get it, apprentices, besides the men's normal rate, they got a bonus rate.
Mhm.
And sometimes they could earn double time if they completed a job quickly, and half
Yeah.
the time they get, double time on their bonus rate,
Mhm.
which brought the wages up. But you know, when it closed down, the tradesman's wage had just reached £5 a week.
Talking about the war, did you ever experience a bombing raid while you were in Hythe? Or?
I had them up the road here, and I could show you two places where they were flattened, completely flattened houses. But then in the powerboat, there'd be a raid overnight, perhaps.
Would there really?
Oh yeah.
It's a regular occurrence.
Well, it happened occasionally, put it that
Okay,
way,
yes.
and we were often called out to get in the air raid shelters across the road.
Yeah.
Once we stayed behind, us kids, and we got ripped off a bit by the security bloke.
Yeah.
Another time was I was in Jimmy Rand's office, where I was the office boy, and I was leaning like this on the windowsill, and below my nose, just there, was an incendiary bomb.
Really?
Yeah. But they weren't explosive in the early years.
No, and you could pick them up and throw them in a bucket, couldn't you? That's the story.
But there's a detonator in there. If they hit the right way,
Yeah.
the detonator would ignite
Yeah.
all the magnesium.
Yeah.
The shell of the incendiary bomb was
Yeah.
magnesium, and it was full of powder.
And it would have had a devastating effect on the boatyard, obviously, because
Yeah.
most of the boats were made of wood, weren't
Oh,
they?
definitely.
So they were quite a threat.
And yes, we heard that they put some out because they would always have people
On guard.
on guard.
Yeah.
For the,
I understand that you've got a photograph
Yes.
of the apprentices. Do you want to show the camera?
Yeah,
Hold it up and show the camera.
This is all the apprentices, including what they call premium apprentices, which had to pay. These would be the college boys, I would imagine. But I'm on the end, right where my thumb is. Down here, sat up.
So you're the one on the end there, are you?
Nearly on the end.
One of the things that I also found lying around is this. Do you know who this young man is?
Yeah, I do
Do you want
recognise
to just
it.
show it to the camera, please?
That came off of my identity card to prove that I worked there, and you had to show it at the gate.
And has it got anything written on it and printed on it?
Yes, it's got my old address in Diblin, Purley,
Yeah.
and it's got it's got British Powerboat Company printed on it. You can just read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody had their own identification
Yes.
card during the war, did they?
Yes, they did.
We were talking about the bombing raids.
Mhm.
Fortunately, Hythe didn't escape completely from the bombing raids.
No way. It dipped in Purloo, caught it, and here and there, because in fact an air raid shelter they hadn't finished building got hit by a bomb.
Yeah. Well, that was lucky no one was in it, wasn't it?
Yeah. But you see, there were some big guns down at Hardley, a big gun site, aircraft gun site, and they would let rip at times when the jury was up there, and I suppose they'd have a go at the guns as well. But even apart from that, all around there are odd bombs. Yeah, the whole area, and along this road here, when it was a dirt road, it was filled from end to end with what do you call it? Gas smokescreen lorries.
Right.
Do you know what they were?
No.
Well, if the wind was in the correct direction, which it usually was, our prevailing one is westerly, and there was a raid on the docks, they'd go out and they'd let the smoke screen develop across the water and cover the ships.
Right.
Yeah.
I've never heard that story before.
Well, they were parked bumper to bumper along here because there were, at that time, there were trees both sides of the road, and it was a complete cover for them. And I wished I'd have kept some of the logs when they cut them up, because they put their battalion and their name, cut it into in their spare time, cut their names and the date and everything. Yeah.
So we were talking about as well about the end of the British powerboat yard, and we were saying that when the contracts came to an end, when the war finished, the contracts were pretty well stopped on straight away, and that spelt the end of the boatyard. You moved on.
Yes.
And basically the boatyard, they turned their hand to different things. You were saying.
Well, before I left,
prefab.
Before I left, they went into making prefabs. How many got turned out, I couldn't tell you, but I was involved in putting a certain amount of wiring in the sections, and there was one actual prefab, a really big one, which put up by the Hythe Hospital for use of the nurses. Just after when the war finished, this was, but then Scott-Paine asked for it to come out, and he must have sold it, and it went into Nodes Way, round the corner. And that place, as far as I'm aware, is still there, because it was made with marine ply. Marine ply is practically indestructible.
Of course,
and it's also treated.
And it's still there.
Yeah, it's still there
today.
as I know. Yeah. So
it was rather unfortunate about Hubert Scott-Paine, of course, because shortly after the war he emigrated to, or during the war he emigrated to America, didn't he?
Went back. I think he came from there, didn't he?
No, he was born down in Shoreham, I believe. Yes. Have you got any idea why he's never been properly recognised? He was never ennobled during his lifetime. There was a proposal to make the Itchen Bridge named after him, but there's and in fact one of the facts about the boatyard when he sold it up was that there was going to statue of him to be constructed that never was. Oh. Have you any ideas why that he doesn't seem to have had the recognition that perhaps he had at the time?
No,
you got any ideas?
I've never heard of any reason why not. But of course, you see, there are other powerboats made by other companies, quite a number of companies that make them as well.
Vosper's very famously, right. And that was the preferred design for the Admiralty, wasn't it? They wanted the Vosper's rather than.
I see.
But his design, Hubert Scott-Paine's design, went to America and was the forerunner of the PT boat, wasn't it?
That's right.
Right. You know, even in America, he was recognised.
Yeah.
He saw the president. He was introduced to the president.
Was he?
Yes, he was. In '39, when he first went over on a so-called secret mission, they wanted to buy his design for the PT boat, But what is fascinating and another thing that I find very interesting is the fact that he hasn't received this recognition, and really it reflects the boatyard itself, which seems to have disappeared from history.
Yeah.
That
Nobody. It's gone quiet, hasn't it?
nobody seems to have recognised it anymore.
I think there was so much going on in those days, so many other things happening.
I want to go really back to the beginning, and you told me the other day the story about Kent, what Kent has to do with the power boat yard. Can you explain, for the benefit of the interview, what that was about? Stories about?
Absolutely got nothing whatsoever to do with Hythe in Hampshire, where we built the power boats. It was somebody has muddled up. We always used to get our letters sent to Kent quite often until we got our postcodes brought in.
Yes.
And whoever started putting this in print about Kent obviously got it completely wrong.
Did you see it in print? Did you?
Oh, what the
Yeah, the Kent. It
it's in
described.
that book.
Yeah, in the which, hold the book up, please. Can you just hold it up?
It's in there. That it's in Kent. This man, and my wife corresponded with him, and we got no answer.
Well, can I just say that's this tallies with my own experience, because I have seen a poster at the Greenwich Museum, Maritime Museum, about the British boatyard, the British power boatyard, and that mentions Hythe in Kent, and that is the Maritime Museum.
Completely wrong.
I think what's the trouble now is it's out of sight is out of mind.
Yes.
And so without evidence such as your own,
It's nothing.
people will forget about it. My next question, Stan, is about the women, because obviously that's the reason why they started to employ the women, is because the men were off at war.
They were virtually called up.
Tell us how that happened then, Stan, if you don't mind. When did they arrive? Did you see them arrive or what?
They were there almost from the beginning when I was there. They were given sort of more straightforward jobs in my line, which was wiring the power boats. They were given the more straightforward work. They didn't get employed in the engine room connecting up all the engines. We had two male full-time electricians. One would take the forward part of the boat and one would take the engine room, and that's how it went on from boat to boat, because each knew the job before they started it. You picked up the drawing, the diagrams from a stores, and when you finished a job you would take it back. But the women worked in very well. They were good. And one funny thing was that on the boats, as you progress from boat to boat, there was one person that had a very good singing voice, a man, and all the women used to like to get on the boat that he was on, because he used to sing the songs of that time, you know, and we liked it as well. It helped the job along, you know, made people feel better. It was a very
friendly atmosphere.
Yes,
it sounds like.
They had the music while you work, which was about an hour after 11 o'clock, something like that. But that was just one of the things. But the women worked in okay, as far as I could make out.
They didn't do the more complicated jobs, but they worked on all the range of craft, did they? The motor boats as well as the motor torpedo boats. Did they?
Oh yes, they were part of the electrical group, like the gang.
Yes.
I was part of.
Yes.
And that would go from one boat to the next, whether it was an RAF rescue launch or a torpedo.
Oh, I see. That's how they organised the workshop. So you were attached to a gang, and that gang would do the same job on each boat and work around the. I've got you. And so the women, did you have much contact with them in the sense they lived at the Priory? That's where they were billeted and trained, is it?
They trained at the Priory, but they lived at Langdale House, which was a big manor house, where the overlooking the council estate at Hythe.
Yeah.
It had all that land there. It was a massive place.
Is it there now? Still there?
No, that's
It's gone. It's
The
gone. It's
entrance-
housing estate.
The entrance into the estate at the top of the hill was
Yeah,
still there,
yeah.
but the two stone pillars and the wrought iron gates, they've all gone.
And they came to work, the ladies, by bus, did they?
They could actually walk.
Stan, I've heard this story about how some of the apprentices were invited along to the women workers' Christmas party. Have you heard this story before?
Oh, it does ring a bell.
Yeah, were you ever invited along to one party? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We knew there was one going on, and a friend of mine said he was going to go. Would you like to come? So I said, yes, I'll come. So we wandered in the gateway and then walked up the drive and into the door of this big house. And these women were all in there dancing around and bouncing balloons up in the air. And we thought it was wonderful. Then we looked down because one had deflated, and we realised it wasn't a balloon at all.
Right, and did you enjoy the party? Did you enjoy the party?
I wasn't old enough to really enjoy it.
And then I understand that the women actually went out onto the boats sometimes with the men working on the boats, and sometimes got caught in compromising positions.
Well,
do you know a story like that?
There was only one occasion when the electrician I was working with on a 41'6" tender, as it was called, there was a tiny chain locker right in the bows with a door into it, and he finally got in there with one of the women workers, and she just had room to sit on his lap. And while he was in there, on came the foreman. He said, "Where's Ken?" I said, "He's just gone off to the loo." "Oh, all right." And he waited and waited and waited. Of course, they couldn't come out. And about a good half an hour went by, and in the end, he snapped off in an anger and said, "I can't wait any more," he said. And they tumbled out all out of breath, you know.
I understand. That never happened to you, did it?
No.
So nothing never happened like that. Everybody who sees this video will agree with me that it's been an absolute privilege to meet you and for you to be willing enough to share your reminiscences with us. And I'm sure for generations in the future we'll be able to benefit from the few kind words you've given us today. Thank you very much, Stan. Cheers.
Well, I'm pleased to see you both. I think it's good that someone is, like yourself is cataloguing all this. Otherwise, it's funny how it can all disappear in thin air otherwise.
Thank you very much for saying so, Stan. Thank you.